Sometimes these things happen in MMA.
What's going on, fight fans? Welcome to These Things Happen in MMA. The goal of this channel is to highlight crazy and spectacular moments that have made mixed martial arts into what it is today. Make sure to follow the channel on social media, and you can find the link to my merch shop in the description below. In this episode, I'm going to talk about how the UFC and WEC joined forces and eventually merged to create an important and historical moment for the sport. This is the story of the UFC acquiring and merging with WEC. World Extreme Cagefighting, or WEC, was established by Reed Harris and Scott Adams. Harris was a former real estate agent turned MMA promoter, while Adams was his kickboxing coach. Adams also has 8 fights under his belt, with the biggest win coming against Ian Freeman back at UFC 24. They were both huge fans of martial arts, and in 2001 they decided to partner up and start an MMA promotion.
The first MMA event we did on the network was back in 2004. It was WEC 9, and I interviewed you in the cage that night. Why were you such a big supporter of that organization?
Well, Scott Adams was my partner in my gym, and actually the guy got me started in doing submission wrestling. Reed Harris, a good friend of mine, partnered up with him to do the WEC. Originally they talked about me getting involved, but they wanted me to fight on it. I had my contract with UFC, and it just wouldn't work out.
In their first 5 years, they accumulated a respectable roster, with weight classes ranging from bantamweight all the way to super heavyweight. Around this time, fighters like Frank Shamrock, Nick Diaz, and Gilbert Melendez made appearances in the promotion. The company was able to separate themselves from the UFC with a pentagonal-shaped cage, a blue color scheme, and an increased focus on the smaller weight divisions.
You know, what makes the WC better than anything else out there?
I think it's the reputation that we're getting is what's making us better than everybody. For putting on really exciting, evenly matched fights. We're booking the best MMA fighters on the planet, you know, and selling out arenas, getting good ratings. And athletes can actually grow with us, you know, because we're shooting up right now. And I think now is the time for fighters to sign up for us because, you know, we're going to be taking over MMA here pretty soon. So
the UFC eventually took notice and decided they would try to buy the promotion, and in December of 2006, they did just that. Fans and fighters alike knew the acquisition meant that the sport was growing, and that there would be a drastic increase in attention on the organization going forward. Initially, the plan was to keep World Extreme Cagefighting the way it was and promote it separately from the UFC. After all, the promotion was doing a great job with Harris and Adams, and they were both kept on as co-general managers. Dana White and the UFC did make a few changes though, starting with the cage aesthetics. They scrapped the pentagonal-shaped cage for the more traditional octagon style that longtime UFC fans were used to. Eventually, the plan was to also phase out WEC's bigger weight classes as to not have any overlap with the UFC. WEC would handle the smaller weight divisions, while the UFC took care of the bigger ones. In June of 2007, WEC was able to secure a broadcasting contract with television network Versus and would showcase some of their events live. NBC sports reporter Todd Harris and former UFC heavyweight champ Frank Mir took on commentary roles for most of the televised events. The announcer for the promotion was Joe Martinez, who current UFC fans might recognize as the man in the octagon whenever mainstay Bruce Buffer isn't around. In 2008, it was announced that 5 weight classes would be dissolved from WEC, ranging from welterweight up to super heavyweight. Some of the fighters would be absorbed into the UFC roster, while others were cut and let go. This time saw fighters like Carlos Condit, Johnny Hendricks, and Chael Sonnen make their transitions to the UFC. The only remaining overlap between promotions would be at lightweight, where there was an abundance of talent at 155 pounds. Also around this time, Scott Adams would leave the promotion and be replaced by current matchmaker Sean Shelby. Shortly after, in 2009, WEC also announced the creation of a 125-pound flyweight division. Now there was officially 4 divisions, ranging from 125 pounds to 155 pounds.
There is nobody else in MMA, at least in North America, giving guys this weight the kind of opportunity to make money for themselves, to grow the sport. Now we got divisions. We got real divisions for featherweight and bantamweight, and soon flyweight will be there as well, 125. And you're going to have some killers coming out at 125. And this is all really courtesy of a lot of people, but leading the charge is Dana White and the UFC.
Although when all was said and done, no flyweight bouts would ever take place in WEC. In 2010, the promotion held their first and only pay-per-view event on April 24th at WEC 48 in Sacramento, California. The card was headlined by a featherweight title bout between Jose Aldo and face of the promotion, Urijah Faber. This felt like a proper UFC event, with announcers Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg filling in on commentary, along with Bruce Buffer handling introductions. The entire card was amazing and featured one of the craziest fights in MMA history when Leonard Garcia took on the Korean zombie Chan Sung Jung. If you've never seen this fight or this card, it's absolutely worth your time.
What do you think this new pay-per-view will add for the fans?
Well, I think that, we added some fights on Versus for free. Spike's got a number of fights for free on on their network. And with the expansion of the company, I think the fans will get plenty of what they want. And I think in the next year or so, we should have, you know, some of the WEC fighters either headlining or co-headlining those UFC cards.
Leading up to this point, complications started to arise regarding the television deals for both MMA promotions. The UFC had a broadcasting partnership with Spike TV at the time, while WEC had a well-established relationship with Versus.
Let me ask you in terms of TV. Obviously, UFC is on Versus now, but also WEC is on Versus. What does it mean for your relationship with Versus?
We kicked this thing off. We did two UFC fights on Versus, and now we're going to do a deal with them for 4 fights in 2011.
So there will be 4 fights on Versus that are UFC, obviously, fights. What about Spike? Same deal?
Yeah, well, you know, like I said, we have the deal with Versus right now, and we have our deal with Spike. In our Spike deal, we can do 4 other fights. So we're doing as many as we can on another network.
Even though Zuffa owned both promotions, their broadcasting situation created complications as the cable channels were owned by separate companies. Also, due to the growth of the sport, the UFC decided it was the right time to implement additional weight classes. Merging with WEC meant 2 more weight divisions would be added to the UFC roster. Both were reasons for the disbanding of WEC, and on October 10, 2010, the UFC officially announced the merger.
Okay, the UFC, not that long ago, took in the WEC, put them under the umbrella. It seemed inevitable that eventually they would just say, come on, it's now all the UFC. And of course, recently, that is the news. The WEC has provided interesting, exciting fights almost every card. Now they come in. I think it's a great fusion for the UFC, bringing some of that lightweight blood.
The final event was held on December 16th at WEC 53 and showcased a headlining title bout between lightweight champ Smooth Benson Henderson versus Anthony Showtime Pettis. This fight was the birth of the famous Showtime kick and saw Pettis become the last lightweight champion of the WEC. Since there wasn't a featherweight or a bantamweight division in the UFC, the champions were brought over and promoted.
The UFC adding 2 weight classes to its ranks, the bantamweight and the featherweight. Dana White joining me now. Dana, what does this mean for Jose Aldo's belt?
Jose Aldo is now the UFC featherweight champion. He'll defend his title on the January card in the UFC.
Now that card also will feature a UFC lightweight bout between Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard. The winner of that will take on whoever wins Ben Henderson and Pettis, correct?
Correct. Pettis and Henderson will fight. The winner of that fight will then fight the winner of Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard to find out who the 155-pound champion is.
As fate would have it, Edgar vs. Maynard 2 would go to a draw and an immediate trilogy bout would be scheduled. Around this time, notable names like Urijah Faber, Mike Brown, and Donald Cerrone would begin their transitions to the UFC as well. In 2011, the flyweight division would finally get implemented, with the inaugural champion being decided by way of a 4-man tournament. The tournament concluded at UFC 152 in 2012, with Johnson defeating Benavidez by a close split decision and becoming the first ever UFC flyweight champion. Scott Adams eventually parted ways with the company sometime around the merger, while Reed Harris stayed on and is currently the Senior Vice President of Athletic Development and Marketing at the UFC. The WEC almost single-handedly validated the smaller weight classes and made them popular and fun to watch. The impact that the UFC-WEC merger had on mixed martial arts was enormous, and it would be hard to imagine the sport without it. The WEC catalog is littered with exciting high-level talent and amazing fights throughout. What started as a passion project between 2 fans of martial arts ultimately led to one of the most important moments in MMA history. As always, I posted some related material in the description for those interested. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below with the topic you'd like to hear me cover in a future episode. Again, don't forget to follow on social media, and the link to my merch shop is in the description below. Thanks for watching and supporting my channel.
Do you think that this is the best for the fighters themselves, the more exposure and the better pay, which they really do deserve for the same amount of training as those UFC fighters?
Absolutely. You know, it's always about the fighters. Even from day one, the first show I ever did, I always made sure I had enough money to pay the fighters and take care of them. You know, we came from a background where we were training with these guys, and my partner Scott Adams was fighting in the UFC, and so understood that side of the business. And I've always held on to that. You know, the fighters are the most important thing in the business. They're the guys that go out there and lay it all on the line. And you know, I'm really excited about them now going on to the biggest stage in the world, and you know, making more money and having more visibility.
Sometimes these things happen in MMA.